This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 437 for Wednesday, March 30th, 2022. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week, Alastair McFly is back. You can find him at Alastair McFly on all the social media that matters. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you for having me back. And episode 437, we are getting into crazy numbers. I mean, we've been in crazy numbers for a while, but it's really hitting me just how crazy those numbers are getting, which is fantastic.
That runs into questions that I get sometimes on stream when someone comes in and they say they listen to the podcast, or they're going and they're listening to older recordings of the Citadel Cafe, and they either ask me, one, do you remember when you said, and I say, nope. Unless it was last week, no, I don't remember. And then two, they'll say like, have you ever talked about this movie? And it's a pretty well-known science fiction movie, or like one of the films that's come out in the last 10 years. And I'm just like, I think so. I'm not really sure. I mean, if it's a big flagship movie like Star Wars, then yes, we obviously have. But if they're talking about like something very specific that I might not have seen, or might not have been at the top of my radar, specifically if it's like a sci-fi show. I watch more films and stuff like that in sci-fi than I do like sci-fi television. So they might ask about a specific, sci-fi series. And it's like, and just because I haven't talked about it doesn't mean that one of my guests haven't talked about it, right?
Yeah, so that's what I was about to bring up is you're more likely to remember your own stuff that you've personally seen. Yes.
Oh, for sure. And so the answer to that question obviously is the same thing. I don't know. Or I'm not sure. The search function on the citadelcafe.com is pretty good. I tend to tag all of the blog posts that have audio associated with them so that you can go and find the topics that you're looking for. You search for Captain America and you'll get episodes, more than likely Brockett and I talking about different Avengers films over the last 10 years. But at least it'll give you back some interesting results, at least get you started, right?
Yeah, I was quite surprised when I added on my own website just a link to all the episodes that I've appeared in, and found it quite surprising that I could just go on to the citadelcafe.com, type in my name, and boom, there's all the episodes. So you can even search by person, which is pretty neat.
Yes, yeah, I tend to tag the guests, and do I have... Well, so the guest name would be in the episode description, like the little blurb. Yes. Joel and Alastair talk about Dune, which is what we're going to be talking about later today, folks. Just kind of FYI.
Foreshadowing.
So, yeah. I need one of those big space foghorn noises for that kind of like dramatic set the stage for later on in the episode. But yeah, so usually you can search for Dune, you could search for Joel and Alastair, you could search, don't search my name because it'll just give you all of them. But if you search for guests that you're looking forward to hearing, or someone that has the same sort of like interests that you do as a listener, then you can seek that kind of stuff out, which is cool. Just before we started chatting, we were live on the show. You and I were going back and forth a little bit about some new podcasting and streaming gear, and you've picked up some.
I have. Yes. Half of it has arrived. The other half I'm still waiting on. But yeah, I got myself a new microphone and microphone arm. I ended up picking up the PreSonus Revelator dynamic mic, and I am so glad to be getting a dynamic mic now versus a condenser. Something I've been wanting for a while.
So I've always thought condensers were pretty good for podcasting, but you find that yours isn't.
Each has its own pros and cons, because condenser mics traditionally will pick up a much better range, so you get a more natural voice sound to it. It's great for singers, it's great for musicians, but it will also pick up a lot of the room. You'll be able to hear a lot of stuff in the background. So like if you got a fan going on or a vehicle drives by, anything like that. Condenser mics are really good at picking up all that nuance. With the dynamic mic, it only picks up what's directly in front of it, and that's pretty much it. So anything further than just a little bit away from the mic, it doesn't pick anything up. And so, especially for broadcast situations, that's where dynamic mics tend to be better. But I think it does limit the kind of vocal range that they can pick up. But with the amount of noise that I have, especially being in an apartment building, I've kind of been wanting a dynamic. Now, the one that I've been using, though, is a Samson C03U, which is marketed as a podcasting mic. The C01U is another model that they have that's a more budget one. And this one I've had for 16 years now. So it's done me well.
I'm on a Yeti that's 10 plus years old.
Yeah. And I mean, these things last for ages. The one thing that I do like with the Samson is it does an omnidirectional pickup as well, or bidirectional, so it can pick up just in front and behind, or a whole 360, or just in front. So it'll try and reduce noise from other directions. When I initially got it, I was using it to record with myself and Trev, who is now my co-host on Long Range Sensors, and we would have the microphone in front of both of us, so in between us. So it was great for that. So it was the right mic for the time. Doing things where everything's kind of done remotely now, because I can't just nip over to London in the UK once a month. That's a little bit more challenging. And just getting a dynamic mic is a cheaper option.
So my Yeti has a cardioid mode that does the same sort of thing as a dynamic mic, not obviously as well as a engineered dynamic mic that just does that. It also has bidirectional, 360, and stereo. I've never found the bidirectional worked very well, because way back when I used to do podcasts where I would do it with the one person in the same room as me, the other side of the mic always had a much lower gain, even on bidirectional, which I always thought, well, that's dumb. Right. Like, why would you have it be different? Shouldn't it be the same on both sides? So what I ended up doing was doing a stereo recording that I would then mix down to mono, so that both myself and my guest, who were on the left and right of the mic, would come out of both ears. And well, I mean, the plus size thing there would be like, it would be a smaller file as well. This would have been 10 plus years ago, so it just made things a lot easier. But I've enjoyed the Yeti. You know, I ended up buying another one. I bought a Yeti X for the streaming computer, and again, I like that. I've had to tweak some settings on it. It wasn't so much that they sound good out of the box. It's more like they have a lot of potential. Like they have a lot of sensitivity because they've got 4 pickups in them. And between the Yeti settings, I didn't use the Logitech, which now owns Blue Microphone. I didn't use the Logitech equalizer because I found, as I very often do on the PC, that the Logitech software that you're supposed to run in the background while you're running your, using your Yeti X is a hog on resources. So I just don't run it. And instead I use Streamlabs OBS, well, Streamlabs desktop, I guess technically now, to filter out a couple of the background noises, things like keyboard clicks, fan noises, things like that. And I find it pretty good. I do find that it picks up a lot of plosives, even though I've got pop filters on both mics. I find that the Yetis are pretty sensitive to that, which is weird because I know that Yetis are often used for singing. Like people that are musicians will use Yetis all the time. And it's just like, I don't understand why they'd be so sensitive to that kind of stuff. But the other thing that I find with the Yeti is that, to your point about them picking up all the different things, it won't pick up a fan. Like if I have a fan in the next room pointing in here to keep it cool, it won't hear that. But if a blue jay shows up in the backyard that's really high pitched, it'll get through 100%. It's not loud, but it certainly comes through where I'll hear a bus going by and think, oh gosh, that's loud. And you won't hear it at all on the recording, right? But the blue jay absolutely will.
Unexpected guest. Surprise guest.
Exactly. Canadian, at least, at the very least, right?
Yeah. I should probably add that I'm not using the new mic right now, partly because I have to go through those settings. and tweak things a little bit. That's the thing. You can get the best, most expensive microphone in the world. This is actually a more budget version that competes with some that are a bit more higher end. Brand new. It only came out like a month ago, which is really neat. But yeah, out of the box, it sounds brilliant, but there's still always tweaking that you need to do.
Well, yeah, you've got to tweak it to your environment. Like, what's your room look like? Like, does it have a lot of hard surfaces? Are you dealing with a lot of reverb? Like tweaking it to your voice and all that kind of stuff. I agree. I'd like to get more into that kind of gear, but at the same time, I feel like I'm just adding another point of failure. Like, all of the professional podcasters that I look up to are using XLR mics, which means they have a mixer that they have to go through. And it's like, oh, do I really want to go through that? Yes, I know that it'll sound better in the end, but I feel that plug and play USB mics are to the point now where, for clarity, I don't need, and I don't necessarily want to sound like I'm on terrestrial radio. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a certain level of podcasting audio quality that once you hit it, I don't necessarily think your listeners are going like, oh, well, you sound great, but, like, as long as they can hear you and you're not peaking and like really having a poor audio experience, then I think that you're doing okay. I'd much rather, put time into content than to new gear. But
well, to your thing on XLR, like, I was looking at an XLR, and for those who aren't aware, it's basically just the traditional type of microphone connection. It's a very sort of large, thick, round cable connector versus something just plug and play like USB. Now, PreSonus, who make this microphone, they have one of the audio interfaces that they make for their XLR mics, and they've actually effectively built that into this one. So it's actually built in, so the microphone is handling all of that itself before you go into USB, and then they just have an app that lets you configure that. And so my computer's not doing any resources. The mic is basically handling all of that itself, which is pretty neat. And so I've been playing around, and one of the things that I found most interesting about it is that it has a few effects built in, including a ring modulator. And a ring modulator basically chops up the sound of the audio, and that's how they produce the noise of the Dalek on Doctor Who, and also the Cybermen as well. They kind of tweak that around. So I've been having a lot of fun playing around, and I know that you know this because I sent you an audio recording of one of my early tests. Still a lot of tweaking to do, but I can make myself sound like a Dalek at the push of a button, which I'm going to have a lot of fun with.
For sure. I like the look of the new mic. It doesn't look like it's super big either.
Oh, no. It's a really good size. I love this. It comes with a little stand, which takes up no room at all. And that will be quite useful if I end up doing live streams of me repairing Game Boys, which is something I'm not committed to yet, but I am considering streaming that on Twitch, and the stand it comes with will certainly help with that. There's also a mic arm that I've ordered. That's the bit that I'm still waiting on. It's by a company called Ava Media, and again, this only came out about a month ago. And it's a really innovative streamer arm, because a lot of them will be pretty high up. You get ones that will go over a monitor. You've got ones which are a low one, which could go under a monitor. This one does all of those things. It is basically like an all-in-one, and you can use it not just for a microphone, you can use it for a camera or a phone. So I could even set that up for my camera as well. So there's going to be a lot of versatility there. But where it's really useful is that my desk is terrible. I love my desk. It is a big desk. It's wide. It's deep. But there's not really anywhere for a mic arm to actually mount to other than the very back of the desk, because there's no sort of overhangs, no kind of lips to the edge of it. And the problem with most mic arms is that the stand goes backwards before it comes forwards, just because of the way it has to support itself. So the only way for me to fit a traditional mic arm would be to pull my desk out to the point that I just wouldn't have any room at all. And so I was looking for, like, there must be something that I can get that just clamps on and just, can bend around and move around and stuff. And this does that perfectly. So didn't exist at the time I was looking for it, but I was like, that must be something. And these guys have come up with the exact thing that I was wanting. So I was very happy to see that was there. And some great reviews on it as well. So as soon as that comes, then I'll be able to get set up properly and use that for my podcasting and streaming.
Nice. I have arms from Newar, I think is the brand name, just NEEWAR on Amazon, and they're cheap. Like it's basically like a Luxart lamp arm, but instead of a light bulb on the end of it, it's essentially, a spot that you can thread a microphone. They're made specifically to work with things like the Yeti and other small USB mics. So they don't hold a lot of weight. Your mic weight will determine whether or not the arm can handle it. But what I like about them is that you can tighten the screws. They've got little hand tightened plastic knobs. So once you've got it in a position that you like, you can tighten it up and it's not going to go anywhere, which is great. They are, however, something that will pick up desk vibrations and send it up the boom. I had to add a shock mount to my Yeti X on the gaming rig because, of course, more active keyboard stuff happening on a PC with a gaming keyboard. The vibrations were going up the microphone, and it's still I got a cheap. I don't remember the brand of the shock mount, but it works, but it didn't work well enough. And so I had to also adjust some things with the, I can't remember what kind of low frequency thing I had to put on it, but there's a filter I had to add into Streamlabs desktop in order to handle it. But I noticed, I don't remember what stream it was, but I did end up adjusting the mic. And because they've got springs in them, they're not like a silent tension arm. You'll hear the springs adjust on stream once in a while if I move it or if I bang it by accident. I've done it on this show before. I tend to try to find them and cut them out because I'll write down when they happen. But I've definitely been talking with my hands excitedly about something, and then all of a sudden you hear whang you hit because I hit the spring or I nicked it or something.
The thing for me was when I switched from earphones to headphones and I moved the position of it because, like I said, trouble mounting it to my desk. I actually have it mounted to my bedside table and it is coming over my shoulder from behind me. And so I'd moved it to there, and then I got new headphones as well. They were over ears rather than just in ears. And every time I would turn around, I'd accidentally knock it with the side of my headphones. It's like, that's going to annoy people on stream. And makes quite a loud clattering noise. But the Luxo lamp description is pretty accurate for what it is. I saw the ones that you had when I came over to visit the other night, and they're just slightly smaller versions of the one that I have at the moment.
Yeah, I like them because they're small. I do have to attach them to the front of the desks, but I have 6-foot long tables for desks, so I can attach it off to my left or right. What I like about them is that when I'm done, I can kind of fold them up out of the way and go back to using the computer with everything right in front of me, and it doesn't affect my workflow. So I do enjoy that. It's a little bit in the way sometimes on the gaming rig because of where I have the iPad for running my streams, but hopefully that's going to change because the other piece of gear that I'm looking at picking up is a Stream Deck from Elgato. And these are pretty common boards that you'll see a lot of streamers use. And I've been using the iPad to do things like switch scenes and, go to be right back screens and start and stop advertisements, stuff like that. And that's fine. I'm underusing the iPad because of how the iPad is set up to do that. I tend not to move the iPad and use it for anything else. So which I should. The iPad should be living in the living room, perhaps, maybe not on my gaming studio setup.
If only they were portable.
Right?
Joel, if only they were portable.
If only you could pick it up and move it around, right? I mean, you'd think that I would do that.
They're designed to use with one hand.
Yeah. The problem is if I start to do stuff and move it around, then I have to sign back into Twitch whenever I go to stream. It adds just another thing for me to do. Anyway, point being that the Stream Deck is it's usually there are about 15 programmable LED buttons. You have one, I believe.
I do. I love my Stream Deck.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at doing some cool stuff. I want to try to get into video transitions for the stream. It's one part I think they're cool. The other part, I just kind of want to learn the skill set. I just want to learn how to do that and apply that. I'd like to, when eventually I want to branch out and play more games in Minecraft, I want to be able to quickly adjust, colors or things like that, so that I can have maybe not a stream setup that's geared so much towards a specific game, but maybe just something that's a little bit more of just like you're watching Joel's channel, like that kind of a feel. And as an artist and someone that's an animator, or used to be an animator once upon a time, I've drawn my own emotes. I've got access to animated emotes, which I'm hoping to get at soon. And one of the things that I was thinking of was adding some sort of animated characters, or a little bit more of a celebration that would happen on screen when someone raids or someone decides to donate or sub on Twitch. And I thought it would be cool if I could press a button on the Stream Deck and have one of those animations play on screen. That's if I can't tie it to automatically happen when someone subs or whatever. So I'm not sure 100% on that, but
you could do both.
Right.
We can talk after the show on details on the automated side of that.
Cool. So the thing about that with Streamlabs, I do find that they don't give you a lot of flexibility in terms of like the size of something. Do you have to use their window? Can you make your own? So there's a few things I need to look into, but I have this little animated character, which is me as a cartoon, a little chibi Joel. And I want to try and do some different expressions and different stuff like that. And I just think we could really start to have some fun with it, especially because I don't have a lot of things tied to channel point rewards on Twitch, which for folks that don't know, those are the free points that you accumulate by watching a stream. So the longer that you watch, the more points that you have. And streamers will have fun things that you can redeem your points for. Our friend Steven will redeem, I don't remember the amount, but he'll do a silly voice for 2 minutes, on stream.
It's 2,000 channel points for Tuesday's Child, as he calls it, with Igmund.
Yeah. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do silly voices, but I think it would be really cool to tie redeem these amount of points, which will then allow you to trigger a command, which would maybe make a silly animation. So one of the memes on my channel right now is because I use so many spruce trapdoors in the medieval town that I'm building in Minecraft, that there's we built this city on spruce trapdoors. It's like a little joke. And I just think it'd be really funny if my little character then held up a spruce trapdoor, like the Ghetto Blaster from Say Anything, like that kind of a situation. I just think I think it would be really funny. So stuff like that I want to do. It's not necessarily animated, but I need to be able to switch it, and I can't control it on my own. I need it to be a single button press, then that animation plays, and then it goes away. So that kind of stuff.
This is one of the really good things about the Stream Deck, is that you have buttons for individual tasks, but you also have buttons that can automate a workflow. So you can have it so that a single button can make something appear. You can add a delay and then have it to turn that object off again. So you can do all those kind of things quite easily. I have it where because I don't like having a camera on me, I use a Memoji from my phone. So I'm capturing from my phone, so you get a 3D animated version of my head. But what I found was that in Minecraft, you can be quite emotive by going into third-person mode and showing your Minecraft character. And it's a very different kind of conveying of emotion. But when you've got both heads on screen, it doesn't really work. So I have a button that will automatically take me into third-person mode and turn off the Memoji. And then when I go back into first person, I press it again, and it takes me back into first person and brings the Memoji back. So you can have it trigger all of these things. So it's pretty powerful with what you can do.
How easy is it to reassign a button? If you decided that you want that in your top left, and you're actually, I would prefer that to be 2 buttons down. Is it hard to transfer that from one button to the next?
It is drag and drop. You just drag it over. If there's an existing button there, they just switch places.
Nice. So that's the nice thing about coming to these after this is the Stream Deck 2 or 3 or whatever version they're on. They've obviously ironed out a lot of the kinks.
Yeah. The one criticism I have is that the second you click off the window and it disappears, you have to go back to the menu bar to bring it back again. It's not a persistent window, which is a little bit frustrating. But they do have a free trial for the phone app, and it is definitely worth playing around with that because, one, doesn't cost you anything for that trial. You can use it to set everything up. And then if you decide, actually, this works really cool, and I want to buy the physical one, then all you do is you select a drop down just to say which device that setup that you've made goes to. So you just select from the drop down instead of your phone, you just select the Stream Deck. All the work you've already done is straight onto the Stream Deck.
Nice.
So you're not wasting time like setting things up on the phone and then going, oh, I'm going to have to set this all up again. So that was a really seamless transition when I moved over. And the only reason, because I used the app for about a year, the only reason I transitioned over was because I wanted to do the Memoji thing. So suddenly my phone was in use for something else. So,
right.
And I ran out of devices.
You found the phone, it was easy to use as a physical device, as a Stream Deck like app thing? Like,
yeah. It was easy. I must say, though, having the physical one, having the actual physical tactile buttons is a godsend. And a little bit like how on a physical keyboard, on the F and J keys, there's a little nub that's raised. Nice. So you can kind of feel, you have that in the middle button as well. So you can, even just by feeling, you can feel where the center is to kind of go from there. I've also found it really useful, not just for streaming, though. When I'm editing podcasts in Logic Pro, that is an app that I'm not that familiar with. There are so many keys where I would accidentally press the wrong button and suddenly my podcast is ruined, or a window has appeared or disappeared and I have no idea where to get it back. Things pop up and it's like, I don't even know what this is. It looks cool that Logic can do it. Doesn't apply to me. So I push my keyboard away and I use the Stream Deck exclusively as my keyboard, and the only things that are on there are just the shortcuts I use. And not only that, it means I don't even have to remember what the keyboard shortcuts are, of which there are tons in an app like that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Single button and like a 3-key shortcut is just right there. So you can apply it to anything, and it will automatically switch to it based on the app that you have. So I have it set up so that the moment that Logic is in the foreground, it switches to that set. I switch to a different app, it will switch to that set as well. So it can be dynamic based on the actual app that you're in. So if you hate remembering keyboard shortcuts, or there's just too many and you know you're going to keep making mistakes all the time, it is brilliant just for simplifying what you're working with.
Yeah, that could help, because I don't know a lot of Windows commands. And granted, I don't do very much production work on the gaming PC. It's mostly just streaming and gaming. I do all my editing on the iMac. So I'd have to physically, I think, move it and plug it into the iMac if I wanted to do that. But I'm also so far into the Adobe suites that I kind of know the hotkeys anyway. So that's not a big deal for me. However, there are a lot of like Windows shortcuts. Like, for example, my Windows screenshot stopped working and I can't get it to work again. It's driving me crazy. And so having something where I can say, look, open this app and take a screenshot, or switch me into screenshot mode by pressing a button on a Stream Deck. It's overkill, I understand, for what the Stream Deck does. I'm really buying it for stream stuff, or at least that's what I'm thinking about doing it. I'm pretty sure I've talked myself into getting it during this podcast anyway. But yeah, it's really cool. The more that I learn about streaming and like where I want to take it, it's really interesting and fun, the different like skill sets and things that you can unlock. Like, I'm also looking at Adobe Character Animator, which is a new piece of software. Without getting into detail, because we got to move on, it was used to create the president cartoon that was on the Stephen Colbert Show. Right. But that's like a puppet thing. So like it uses your face like an emoji or a Mimoji to animate the face. But if you want to make them happy, sad, or move their arms to a different position, you have to touch a button on a keyboard, sort of like puppeting a Muppet, but it's digital.
Right.
And so I can't do that and stream at the same time. Like, my brain would explode. So that's why I want the automated thing. Or if I can't do automated, or maybe both, like maybe have some celebratory animations that happen when someone subscribes. But if someone says something really dumb or makes a really like, eye-rolling dad joke in the chat, it would be hilarious to have like a little animation response to like deadpan stare, just kind of like, really, Elkhorn? That's where you're going. Yes, I'm putting Elkhorn on blast right now for no good reason other than that's the first name that came to mind. But yeah, so that kind of stuff is fun. And I mean, just small plug, both Alastair and I stream on Twitch. It's Alastair McFly on Twitch, and it's Joel Duggan on Twitch for me. Both of us stream from the Citadel Minecraft server, but we both have really fun communities, and they're a good group of people, and it's funny. Like, I'll look over at chat sometimes and just crack up because of what's going on. So there's always some sort of strange meme or, Cosmic is giving one of us hell for something. So worth checking out, folks. The links are all on the citadelcafe.com for folks that are wondering. Which reminds me, I forgot to plug your podcast at the start of the show. Those links are also on the citadelcafe.com, or you can just go to longrangesensors.com and listen to the Star Trek Retrospective podcast. We have an email this week that I'm not going to read, which sounds weird, but I wanted to give Jordan P. a shout out for his email about books. The reason why we're not going to read it or get into it this week is because Alastair hasn't read anything in a while, and what I have read recently has not been sci-fi or fantasy. So we're going to wait until I've got either Brockett or Lou on the show, Jordan, to tackle your email, because they both read more often than I do. And so I think you'll get a better response and maybe even have some book recommendations from them. You could look up some search stuff on the website maybe, and see if we've talked about other books in the past, but that's just for in the meantime. Absolutely, we'll get to your email. We don't get very many here on the Citadel Cafe, so I'm happy to get them. I'm happy to file it and just say, save for Brockett or Lou. So that'll be sometime in April. We'll get to that. But thanks very much for sending it in. Very much appreciated. This week, we are going to talk about Dune, the one from 2021 that came out in November last year. And I finally had a chance to watch it. It was on HBO Max around Christmas time, I think, in the US, but it did not come to HBO here in Canada, which is exclusively on Crave or Bell Access here in Canada until March 18th. I watched it pretty much the day it came out. And I will just let people know that my entire review of this film is going to be tainted by the absolute garbage stream that Crave provided. It was choppy. It was 1080p, which means there's no reason for it to be choppy. The fact that this movie was in 1080p is just sacrilege, considering the amount of work that went into it and how it's supposed to be experienced. And the sound mix was also terrible. Now, I've heard that the sound mix was challenging even in the theaters, but on a home system, it was awful. I was constantly interrupting my flow of watching this movie to turn it up to hear what the hell was going on, and then turning it down for fear that my neighbors were going to want to murder me with a wooden spoon, because the bass and the reverb would just like shake my couch. I'm just like, well, I had to turn it up because the last conversation was a whisper for 5 minutes. And then they cut to like, oh, now we're outside with like this giant spaceship, and the space foghorn just rattles the windows. You're just like, good Lord. Like, it must have, you saw this in theaters, right?
I did, yes.
It must have shaken your colon.
I felt it a little bit, yes. There was a little tingle. It was pretty loud. And yeah, I know what you're saying. Like the voices were really quiet, but then you have just this big booming noise coming from Hans Zimmer's score. And Vanity Fair actually did a really good interview with Hans Zimmer. And, to his credit, there is a lot of new techniques that he's using. That particular foghorn type sound, he said he wanted it to sound like a Tibetan war horn. He says he doesn't believe a Tibetan war horn exists, and I would likely assume that's the case. But interesting that's, just the kind of sound he was going for. And he said that when he approached it, he didn't want to approach it like a lot of sci-fi films where there's big orchestral scores. He wanted to attack it like he was a 13-year-old teenager again. So lots of drums, not quite the kind of orchestral sound that we're used to. But even with all these new techniques and some of the very interesting use of instruments and vocals all mixed in, really good video from Vanity Fair on YouTube on it, I still don't like it. That whomping boom noise from the Tibetan war horn is I found it too overpowering, and I think just used too much.
And repetitive.
Personally.
Like
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, too much. Yeah.
not used just for dramatic effect. I mean, sure, if there's a spaceship the size of a city, then sure, hit it. Why not? Like, it's sci-fi. I get it. It's big. It makes it sound big. But like, I've been in a desert. I've done lots of hiking in the desert. And the most profound thing about it is that you can't hear anything. There's no noise. Like, if it's windy, maybe, but like, you really can't hear anything because it's so quiet. There's no cars, there's no white noise, there's no planes, nothing. And
not even water.
Yeah, and there's scenes in Dune that you're just kind of like, what you want to feel is like space and silence. And instead you get this big wah, and you're just like, but where is that coming from? Like, so it sounds like a sound effect. It doesn't sound like a score. And I think that that's kind of where I do the line. I don't remember who did the score for Arrival, but it had a very similar approach, but it worked in that film. I thought it helped that film. Now there is some music in Dune that I thought was good. I can't remember exactly when, like at what point in the film. And I guess I should warn people now, we're going to get into some spoilers. But usually it's whenever Paul Atreides is having like a vision of Zendaya's character. And he's seeing this, pretty girl in the dunes of Arrakis. There's usually like some sort of, I don't want to say tribal, but there's a vocal piece to it. And it's the part that's in the trailer that kind of sells like the kind of it has a very Arabian sort of feel to it. Very, we'll say Middle Eastern just in general. And I like that. I thought that was good. But most of the time I was just feeling assaulted by the thing. And again, a lot of my dislike of the experience has to do with the streaming experience, not so much the film. I didn't love the film, but it didn't make me angry in the same way that the streaming and the sound did. Overall, I thought it was pretty slow. Like there's a couple of exciting moments, but most of the time it was pretty, like, even the conversations between characters were slow and whispered. You don't get a lot of heated exchanges. Every now and again there was something, but very, very little happened in that light. You get rewarded for your patience with these panoramic location shots and cool sci-fi ornithopter moments. But the bulk of the story is just whispered in hushed conversations between people that I was struggling to hear. Some things about that were cool. I really enjoyed the sign language that they used between Paul and his mom, Lady Jessica. I thought that was neat. I loved that they made it very clear what was happening. They gave you subtitles, and like other moments were cool, like when she was signaling her captains of the guard to say like prepare for violence, like stuff like that. Like I thought that was well done and better than and more unique than them dropping into a different language, like having the actor say something similar to how, like, in Lord of the Rings they speak Elvish and then they put up subtitles, that kind of a thing. I thought the hand signs were more unique and an interesting. As much as I didn't like the booming sounds, it was an interesting diversion from it, right? Because of course it's dead silent when they do it, and I thought that was cool. But yeah, the choice for having everyone being so whispered, I felt made it hard to hear them and feel the importance of the scenes. There are things that I missed watching the film because I just got tired of rewinding and throwing up subtitles and being like, "What the hell did they just say?" Like no clue, And so that was a problem. What did you think of like the story, like the plot overall?
I found it tiresome, I think is probably the best way to describe it. I am glad and grateful that they didn't just have like to be continued at the end, that they did actually start it off by saying it's Dune Part 1 off the bat. I remember that being a thing. And so you accept that this is not a complete story. Yeah. But you spend, what is it, like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, something like that. And you get to the end and barely anything's happened. They also build up Zendaya a lot in this. So she's obviously going to have more impact in the second one because there was diddly squat with her in this first one. And so I kind of expected that they would at least, like, that would be the big crescendo, that there'd be at least a massive scene with her. And you just kind of meet her and then that's it. So I felt like for the amount of time you invest in it, there are, as you said, and I think you put it beautifully, that there's some great panoramic scenes, there's some great visuals. But for me, I just felt that there was just so little actually happening that, it's like going into a meeting and thinking this could have been an email. I almost think that it would have worked better as a miniseries in a way, just for the pacing.
With a miniseries, you could have had like the setup episode. You could have had like the invasion of the Harkonnen episode.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. Like that would have. I think you're right. I think a miniseries. But didn't they try that? Like, wasn't there like a
there was back in
miniseries
2000,
2000 or something like that? But I mean, but back then it wouldn't have been that good. Yeah, it wouldn't have been that good back then because of just effects and things like that. On one hand, like a series would be good, but like a series, you've got to be Disney, or someone of that size, like Amazon, to do a series like this, to have the budget for it. But yeah, I agree with you on the visuals. I think that and that's one of the reasons I was so mad that it was in 1080p. Like, I know that Crave has some things in 4K. I have yet to find them.
I was talking with a friend who's a developer about that particular thing, because it is available in Crave, or on Crave, I should say, when you view it on the Apple TV. Their Apple TV app supports 4K. They do say that the Roku, which is what you're using, does support 4K for some content, but it seems to be some different content. The fact that it was choppy as well, my developer friend was saying that could be a bunch of issues. It could be that Crave just don't have a cache of the content on the local exchange, and so it's having to contend with other traffic on that backbone. It could be that it just wasn't getting a good connection, so it's falling back to a lower sample rate. So there's a lot of different stuff, but especially when Bell only caters for Canada, unlike somewhere like Disney Plus, for example, that's catering globally. And although Roku is, I think they've got a higher market share in Canada, just because it is a cheaper service. Partly, one of the other things he was mentioning was that having a device that's aimed more at a lower budget market means that the priority may not be there for their development team and whatever development constraints that team may have. But it's also hard to justify that when you're kind of looking at something that costs $20 a month.
Exactly.
And that is definitely a massive impact. There was even a Reddit thread I was seeing where somebody was saying the exact same thing as yourself, with how the quality is often poor. They're saying that it's rife with low bit rates, low resolution, stereo-only audio, frame judder, all of that kind of stuff. And it's when you're pairing it up with a price tag that's pretty high, it's harder to stomach, even if you can understand that there are likely technical or resource issues behind certain decisions there. And it's not a fun experience when it's a movie of this scale.
No, and that's the thing. Like, you want to have a good home theater experience, and I know I can get it because I've watched things like Endgame on Disney Plus, right? Now, I know Disney Plus is much different and much larger than Roku and Crave, but like, we're talking about HBO here. Like, I feel like there should be something, and I know that there's just a lot of different factors that come down, but I think it's for me. I think that I feel like there should be a little bit more of an equilibrium across the streaming experience by now. And the fact that we don't have it just feels that there's other factors at play that are not in the best interests of the viewing experience, whether that be, bottom line, cheaper, make things cheaper. Like you said, the Roku's, Roku also has a lot of SKUs. Like, I mean, there's how many different types of TVs are there, right? That have a different version of Roku. Like, who knows, right? Plus, there's the standalone Roku boxes.
Yeah, and when they're saying that they support 4K on Roku, we don't know if that's as a standard thing or if that's only select devices. And Crave's website doesn't go into any more detail on that. So it could be that just the particular Roku setup that you have isn't supporting the 4K stream. Which means that for you, the price of entry to get 4K isn't just that $20. It's getting an additional piece of hardware, whether that's another Roku device that's separate or an Apple TV or something else. Your price of entry suddenly goes up a lot more.
So to get back into the meat of the film, I like Zendaya, but she's barely in it. I liked what I saw of her. She seems to be pretty on par with what I've seen of her in Spider-Man films, where she's basically kind of like matter of fact, kind of like tell it like it is, smart ass sort of comments and stuff. But all of the Fremen seem to be like that, so it's not necessarily like a typecast thing. But I liked it. I thought her presence was good. I don't want to judge Timothée Chalamet too harshly because I've not seen him in anything else, but I don't get the hype in Dune. He's pretty bland. That could be the character, that could be the direction, that could be his choice. I don't know. I don't necessarily lay it at his feet, but I'm definitely tired of these broody young male protagonist types that I just want to tell them to stand up and speak up. Like it doesn't suit the story at all. And it just makes it difficult to either identify with and or understand the character motivation when they have one emotion, like, which is brooding, the entire time. So I didn't really get all the hype. But again, I've not seen Chalamet in anything else. The one character that I was really invested in was Duncan Idaho. It's also the only time you see Paul Atreides light up is when Duncan Idaho, played by Jason Momoa, enters the scene. And you can tell that it's like a big brother, kind of like the fatherly figure that doesn't have the fatherly pressure. Because his father, played by not Jason Isaacs, Oscar Isaacs, is he's the king of the Atreides, Lord Atreides. I think I remember what his title is. But there's a lot of pressure on Paul because he's essentially a prince. So dealing with Duncan, it's more of like a buddy situation. And Jason Momoa brings the same kind of Jason Momoa energy that you would expect he would bring to any film. And he's really good. He goes from being like badass to boisterous military to soft-spoken political, respecting culture. Like he's a really cool character for Jason Momoa, and I'm pissed that he's dead. So it's just like I don't have like the one thing that I was grabbing onto. It's not going to be in part 2 because he died helping Paul Atreides escape, and I just like, God, why? It's the same thing with Oscar Isaacs. Great actor, thought he was great in the role, but also died. And you're just kind of like, what? The trailer is nothing but the Star-Spangled Banner of like, come for the epic of Dune. And these people are only in it for the first 2 acts. Like, what? Or not even that, because this is probably like act 1.5 for the film as a whole, because it's part 1, right?
Yeah.
Other surprises were Stellan Skarsgård. I didn't realize he was in it. I thought he was great as Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. By the way, I grew up playing the Dune video game, and I've been mispronouncing Harkonnen as Harkonnen my entire life. So I'm trying to say it right on the podcast, and I'm pausing and correcting my brain every time I say it. So, and it makes sense when you see it spelled. You're like, oh yeah, no, I was totally pronouncing it wrong. I really enjoyed the way that they did the Baron. Different than the 70s film, but different in a cool way. It was the one time in the film that I felt that the sound suited and amplified the scene. The bass rumble when his cybernetic spine would come on and lift him off the ground made him intimidating. Oh, yeah. Like it felt like it was vibrating inside of him. It had that like bone deep feel, and I was like, ugh, like he's gross anyway. But I thought it was great. I didn't even recognize him at first because he's got a lot of prosthetic makeup on to make him look like super fat and stuff. And
that whole thing where he's kind of levitating is probably one of the biggest standout scenes for me.
Yeah. I thought it was really, really well done. And he has some other really cool moments that just, they really do a good job of showing you that he is the boss applesauce for whatever reason. And people respect him, and he is just enjoying the wealth and gluttony of being on top of his people, right? And them being a very violent military kind of like, definitely, I'm not sure what you want to call it, like not totalitarian, but they're not nice people. They're essentially the bad guys. That unfortunately is kind of crossed with Dave Bautista as Glasu Ruban, and it's Dave Bautista / Drax. Like I can't. He doesn't really bring a lot to that role. Part of that could be the dialogue. It's a lot of like just straight military speak, and then a lot of yelling and screaming. And so like you just think Drax, like he doesn't really, and there's not a lot of makeup on him. He's such a distinct looking person that when he's bald, it doesn't matter what color he is, he just looks like Batista / Drax. Whereas I've seen him in like family comedies, not that I've watched the movie, but in trailers, I'm just like, oh wow, that's Batista with like hair and glasses. That's weird, you know. And I think he pulls off that look and looks very different in those films than he does in this. Anybody else for you stand out as like either a good role or a role that you're just like, I don't understand why they were cast that way?
I really liked Rebecca Ferguson in this, and she was as was it Lady Jessica?
Yep,
it was. Yeah, she was fantastic in it, and is probably one of the other sort of few ones which I really really liked. There was a couple of other characters, but it's been because I saw this at the theater when it came out, so I'm struggling to remember a lot of the nuances from a lot of the characters. I remember that Javier Bardem was in there, and I thought he was kind of cast okay. I mean, I haven't seen much of Javier Bardem's work. The main thing I know him from is the James Bond franchise.
I didn't recognize him at first, and I think it's because Bardem is a chameleon.
Yeah, I think that's why I've probably seen him in more films than I realize.
Not only does he look different in his roles, because he'll like cut his hair short, shave his beard and his mustache, and then dye his hair blonde, you know, or he'll be in like Bond, where he's got like they mess him up with like prosthetics and stuff and that kind of thing. And I find that he's usually taking things that are uncomfortable roles, so he's really good in them. But then he makes you uncomfortable to the point where you almost want to you want to look away. And so you're affected by his work, but then you don't remember him that it was him, right? Because he looks so different, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I loved his performance. I liked the way that he portrayed the leader of the Fremen. What's the guy's name? Stilgar. And he, I liked him the moment he walked in. Like he's the king of the Fremen. He's the leader, but like there's nothing regal about him. Like it's all about survival, and like you're just here to pilfer our land. Go the hell home. Like he's real. I liked him a lot in it. And I agree with you. Jessica Ferguson was great. Whispering aside, I think that the battle that her character has, as you know, between the position that she has in House Atreides as Paul's mother, she's not the wife of Oscar Isaacs. She's they call her something, lady in waiting or something. I can't remember. She's not like the queen, but she's close. And she does a really good job of balancing that role with the role that she has in whatever religion she's part of. I can't remember exactly what they called it. Again, these are things that I wish I would remember, and would if I could hear what the hell was going on half the time. So that to me was part of the problem. Duke, that's the title, Oscar Isaac. So she wasn't like the wife of the Duke. She was like the mistress or concubine, or I can't remember what someone called her something. But I couldn't figure out whether the title that they gave her was an insult, as if they were calling her the Duke's whore, or if they were saying, no, that's technically what she is. She's not a wife. She's a, lady in waiting or whatever. But yes, I agree. I thought she was good because she's a mother and she's afraid for her son, but then she's got this duty that she has to the revered mother Mohame, I think. Like there's all these different things that are playing inside of her head, and she does a really good job of doing that. It's one of those situations, though. I think we've talked about this on the show. I know Steven brings it up from time to time, where she doesn't look old enough to be Paul's mother. Right? Not that Oscar Isaac does either. Just because, and you don't know. I mean, like, and technically they're probably old enough, but like she really doesn't look it.
Now, I might be wrong on this, but isn't part of the thing with the spice that they live longer as a result as well?
So I don't know. That I don't know.
The spice may very well be a way to work around that kind of thing.
I thought the spice was fuel for interstellar travel. I thought that's why it was so important.
Yes, there is that, but I think one of the side effects is longer life, and like how one of the side effects is that the eyes turn blue, for example.
Right. I'm not sure, but anyway, yeah, I liked her stuff. I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about spice and the sand dunes. And the sandworms. I thought all of that, like any time that they did some cool desert stuff, I was on board, despite the soundtrack. Like I still felt like it was really well shot. You really felt immersed. I'm so glad that I'm sure there was some green screen work, but like most of it that you had outside shots, I really felt like they were there. Like they were shooting a lot of it outside with real photography and stuff, principal photography, and you can feel the difference in the film, and I hope we get more of that instead of a lot of these green screen films. But yeah, I like that. I know that the sandworms are supposed to be fairly simplistic. They're just supposed to be humongous. I can't say that I was on board with the sandworm design. There was a little bit at the end when it confronted Paul, which was, to me, I was just like, is he alive just because the script says so? Like, I don't understand why he was spared. Because he doesn't do anything. If he tried to use the voice or if he did something and the worm listened to him, then sure. But there's absolutely no indication as to why the worm just didn't eat him. So the thing that I picked up on in that scene was they gave a close-up of the inside of the worm, and you could see all the different muscles, and it started to remind you of like the Sarlacc pit from Star Wars. And I thought, okay, I get to see a little bit more. But like up to that point, all you were seeing was basically like the sand would just fall down this giant hole and it would swallow everything. So it was so big that you didn't get any real detail, which I guess is, if that's part of the threat, sure, I get it. And they did a good job of like, showing the worm coming in the sand and the waves. And I liked how the sandworm would vibrate the sand and it would start to like filter down into its mouth, almost like quicksand, when it starts to vibrate and everything becomes, people sink up to their knees and they can't go anywhere. Like that kind of stuff I thought was cool. But the final look of the worm when you saw it is like, it just looks like a vacuum cleaner. Like it didn't really.
Oh, I had worse than that. My friend that I went to the cinema with said that she had heard a different description for it before we went in, and that was that it looked like a giant butthole. So when it's there, stood right, with.
It's so true.
Yeah, with Paul Atreides just stood there staring at it. All I could think was, that's a giant butthole. That's all I thought.
It's like that scene in Community when they put up the flag for the students. Yeah, that's
yeah. The but one thing that was interesting though, I mean, to your point about just the design of it, I felt that they did it so much better in Tremors. I thought the worms in Tremors, the graboids as they're called, I think that was far better done on what was obviously a much lower budget, but again, slightly different scale because we are talking something that's a lot more massive and wouldn't be possible with animatronics in the way that they did with the size that they were doing in Tremors. But there's a really good YouTube video from the Corridor crew, and they do a big VFX artist react to bad and great CGI series on there. And episode 66 that they did had Robin Luckham, who is the global head of animation at DNEG, DNEG, that's how it's spelled. And he he went through and described a lot of the stuff that they did. And so for the muscles that you see in the worm itself, that's actually based on the throat of a beatboxer. And so having a beatboxer do the kind of noises it was making, they were having the muscles based on that to try and match that noise, which is kind of interesting.
That is really cool. And I'll say, like, I don't want to sound like I'm saying that the CG in the film was bad, because the CG in the film was spot on. There wasn't a moment where I went like, oh, that's a green screen, or oh, that's a kind of a wonky shot. It all looked pretty solid to me. And for me, it's more about the production design of the worm rather than the CG execution. Like I didn't question for a minute that giant butthole was staring at Paul. Like I was there. Thankfully, I didn't have that thought during the film. Otherwise, although now if and when I watch part 2, that's all I'm going to be able to think. It's just like,
You're welcome.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Sorry, listeners. But yeah, they did a good job on that, but I feel like there just wasn't enough other things in the movie to really hook me in. I finished it because I had already invested an hour into it. I was like, well, I might as well watch it and talk about it on the show. But I don't understand why everybody was losing their mind. Other than maybe just the feat of making the film was a respectable and very, a lot of hard work went into it. But like, it's not knocking my socks off. Like I didn't walk out of that feeling changed or excited or, thrown into this. I didn't even really feel that immersed in the world of Dune, right?
No.
Arrakis a little bit, but not the universe. The universe did not suck me in because I think they glazed over too much too quickly. And again, it was hard to hear.
Yeah. And not only that, I found it was hard to see. I mean, I'm watching it in a very dark cinema, and I found that like you'd have the desert scenes which were really dark, like stupidly dark, to the point that you're trying to focus so hard on seeing it, and then they'll cut like just after your eyes have adjusted to a very bright interior setting, and you are blinded because the contrast between that is so great. And so you're dealing with this massive visual change along with whispering voices, which are really quiet, and then this loud booming noise. And so when you're dealing with both the video and the audio at the same time, I found that really off-putting. And I know that partway through the film, I remember just looking at my watch to go, when will this end? Because my senses are being upset, and the story just feels like it's dragging, and it's taking too long on the points that it shouldn't, and is skimming over the bits that it should focus on.
That's it. You got it right there in the head. That's exactly what it was. It was spending far too long on inconsequential stuff where nothing was going on. And then when important stuff would happen, it would be 2 minutes.
That's it. And I cannot remember the last time I was in a cinema looking at my watch, just wondering, when do I get to leave? That was to me a bad sign. And my friend and I, we walked out and we're just like, honestly, not interested in a second one. It's one of those, if it's on, I might watch it, but I don't feel compelled to go out of my way to watch it again. And similar to what you were saying, when you're not drawn into that world, like I don't feel any investment to it, and I don't have the care for the characters to really want to see it. And the characters that you do care about, to your earlier point, they're gone anyway. So,
right.
All we've got to look forward to is this big giant butthole, and I've got more important things in life than to see that.
Moving on to the Internet Minute, which is, of course, brought to you by you. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you're getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server shared with my personal Discord and access to the Barista Cut bonus audio sessions. Our bean counter this week is Smurf588. Thanks so much for the support on this episode. Patron count is at 26. If you'd like to be 27, visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. What is your pick this week, my friend?
It's something called the Great Bubble Barrier, which I came across. So normally traditionally I've usually been picking up sci-fi or some cool kind of stuff, but this is something which I think you'll find quite interesting because I know you like things on renewable energy and conservation, environmentalism stuff. And this is an elegantly innovative use of a bubble curtain. Bubble curtain is basically just a pipe laid on a riverbed or seabed with just bubbles coming up, and it's usually just to stop the flow of things into, say, a marina or something like that. But this is specifically a Dutch invention that builds upon it, and it uses these bubbles to trap and redirect plastic trash in rivers before they reach the ocean. There's a use of it in a canal in Amsterdam at the moment, and the bubbles are basically at a diagonal in the river. And so all this trash will kind of move over to it and it will get scooped up into a thing just basically to pull all this trash out. And they found that in the test, they've managed to catch 86% of the trash in the river. And what makes this even better is that it doesn't disturb boats, so they can still pass through. Fish and wildlife are unaffected. They have no problem getting through it either. And because we've got bubbles in water, it's also helping oxygenate the water, which prevents toxic algae growth. So having all these benefits, including it even absorbs the sound from boats, which limits disturbance for fish. There's so many positives to it. It's a really simple implementation. And the Dutch inventors who kind of designed this whole scooping thing to get this trash out are hoping to expand this globally. And I just think it's a really elegant idea, and anything that can help reduce the amount of plastic going into the ocean. I mean, especially with all the other benefits it has, is well worth it. So go into thegreatbubblebarrier.com. You'll be able to find out a load more there. It's super interesting stuff.
We'll have the link, of course, in the show notes. This looks fantastic. Like, what a cool implementation. You wouldn't even know it was there visually if you weren't looking for it.
No.
Like you just think, well, I don't know, the tide is coming in. Like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't look like it's out of place. And when you talked about fish being able to avoid it or get through it, no problem. Of course they can, because like they have their own motor skills, right? And they're used to bubbles where a plastic bottle just kind of like goes wherever the water tells it to go, right? And if the bubbles say "Thou shall not pass," then they just it's really, really cool. Is there any mention of whether it's an expensive thing to put in? I don't imagine it is.
I haven't seen anything about that, but given that it is just pipes just pumping air through, I don't see why it would be. And then it's basically just because it's at a diagonal and all this trash is coming to the surface, there's basically just a scoop at the end that's just scooping it all up. It's basically just a container that it's going into.
Right.
And so they can just sort of take it all out. So it's almost so simple that it's almost kind of like it shouldn't work.
Yeah.
But it does quite effectively. And I think it's just the simplicity of it is what makes it so genius.
I'm surprised that we haven't heard about it before now. I kind of feel like this is something that would be all over the place. But yeah,
I saw it and I was just gobsmacked that this was the first time I was hearing it, and just why isn't this not being used elsewhere? And so they're obviously pushing now to try and get more awareness to move this into other areas. And I think this is a great thing, and just the elegance of it is beautiful.
A lot of the green tech that we showcase on the Citadel Cafe is from like Denmark or Norway or Sweden. Like a lot of the northern European countries seem to have like a lot of resources put towards this. And I mean, as two people that live in a province that's like 80% surrounded by water, I feel like this would be welcome here. I'm not sure how many rivers Nova Scotia has. I probably should know that, but I'm sure that there are a lot of places where this could be very, very well used. What a cool link.
So how about yourself?
Mine is a lot more fun, less socially responsible. As a matter of fact, it's probably financially irresponsible. The Lego set Back to the Future Time Machine set 10300 is set to release April 1st. 1,872 pieces, $220 Canadian. So it's up there with most Lego expert, sets of this size. It's not small. It's 14 inches long, 5 inches high, and 8 inches wide. So like that's a big model of the DeLorean from the Back to the Future films. But what really sold it to me was the fact that not only does it have a light up flux capacitor with a little watch battery inside, but they include all the pieces so that you can have it look like the lightning cable hook DeLorean from 1955, the Mr. Fusion that comes back from 2015, or the hood mounted circuit board that they have to use in 1885 in Back to the Future 3. So depending on which movie is your favorite, you can make it look like your favorite DeLorean, including like the red hubcaps, which I think are from the 55 one.
They are, yes. Yeah.
And of course you get Doc and Marty as minifigs. So like it is a beautiful, beautiful set. It almost has too few Lego studs on the actual model, because it first it doesn't look like Lego because it's so sleek and so well designed. But it does start to look a little bit more like Lego once you put the hood mounted circuit board on there and mess around some things. But man, like it looks absolutely phenomenal. It's such a big nostalgia pull. I mean, I get it. I'm the right demo, and I know you are, but they nailed this.
Some of the accessories that they've got there as well. So it's not just that you got Mr. Fusion, it's that you have trash. They've got a can and a banana. So trash to put into Mr. Fusion, which I think is a really nice touch. There's also the hoverboard as well, and also the casing of plutonium from the first film. And it looks like they've even got the number plate as well. That's the 2015 barcode style number plate for the back of the vehicle, in addition to the traditional Out of Time one from the 80s. Yeah, it's really good. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to try and make the Back to the Future DeLorean, and especially with the blocks that were available at the time, it was pretty limited to what you could do. I mean, obviously, as a kid, your imagination just fills in the blanks. But this is all the detail there, even down to the rotating wheels where they go horizontally for flight mode. It's a pretty stunning set.
Does the time machine from the first Back to the Future have the big black exhaust things on the back?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The exhaust vents. Yeah, absolutely. That's been part of it sort of since the beginning. There's a lot of when it comes through time, it's completely ice cold, and you just get like this jet of all the.
Oh yes, okay, I remember that now. Yeah.
I mean, you've got a big nuclear reactor there that it's got to output and get rid of all that stuff.
I'm also going to throw in another quick link called lighttailing.com, like detailing, but with light at the front. And it's a website for selling LED kits for Lego builds. Everything from Iron Man to the Dark Knight Tumbler to Lego City builds. There's nothing yet for the Time Machine because, of course, the Time Machine isn't out yet. So unless you get like a review copy, you've not had your chance to put your hands on these. So there's no official LED set for this kit out. I would imagine one is coming. And I might look heavily at that because there are a few things about lighting up Lego builds on lighttailing.com where you're just kind of like, okay, wow. Like at first you think, that's kind of frivolous. I don't know if I would do it. Maybe if I had to invest all this money into a big city build and I had multiple buildings and I wanted to do streetlights, that would be cool. But no, some of the individual builds like the Tumbler or the Lego Vespa, like which we've talked about on the show before, like that kind of stuff, it looks sharp. So if you're into Lego and you want to have some LEDs to light up your models on your shelves, then check out lighttailing.com. Again, link is going to be in the show notes.
I do have a question, and that is, have Lego stopped doing lighting? Because I remember when I was growing up that they did actually bring out a lighting kit for stuff so that you could kind of implement these. And now that I'm seeing this and I'm seeing some of the pictures of some of the cityscapes, I remember a friend of mine who had even more than I did, and he managed to do a really nice lit up city build. And the more I think about it, the more I think I've not seen that in a very, very long time. So is it something that Lego abandoned?
I don't think they do, or if they do, it's probably branded, and at which point it's going to be twice as expensive. And now with LEDs being so cheap and so accessible, and people having like home tinker kits and stuff, I think most people just kind of go to third party, for that kind of stuff.
So they're like, rather than investing in that themselves, they just leave it to another company to fill in those blanks.
Exactly. Which is cool, because I think it creates a
sense.
healthy ecosystem around Lego, and I think some people might even buy a Lego set after they see what it looks like lit up. I think it might be an opportunity there too. But
it's almost like using shaders in Minecraft, really.
Yeah, no, exactly. It has that kind of effect. But yeah, it's super, super cool. I'm really looking forward to when this is out. That wraps up this episode of The Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and links to some of the things that we talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod, and you can email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell a friend about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I am doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio, at joelduggan.com. You can check out my other podcast about Minecraft at thespawnchunks.com. Brand new snapshot came out this week. We got to talk about all kinds of stuff. You can follow me at Joel Duggan on social media, and I'll point you towards twitch.tv/Joel Duggan, where I am streaming Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 1 o'clock Atlantic. That's UTC minus 3 hours. Alastair, where can people find you online?
Find everything about me over at alastairmcfly.com. And if you like Star Trek, you might even enjoy my Star Trek retrospective podcast, which you can find at longrangesensors.com.
You've been listening to The Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.